Welcome, dear listener, to another journey into the distant past. A story meant not only to entertain and enlighten, but to accompany you gently into the soft embrace of sleep. Close your eyes, take a long, deep breath, and let the weight of the day begin to dissolve. Inhale slowly and exhale, releasing any tension left in your body. Imagine yourself lying beneath a canopy of ancient stars, a gentle breeze moving through tall desert grasses, and the distant scent of incense lingering in the air. Tonight, we travel together to a world long forgotten by time, to the vast, sun-scorched lands of ancient Persia, where mighty kings rose and fell, and empires stretched endlessly across the horizon. A land of gold, prophecy, and conquest. But within this world of ambition and power, there lived a ruler unlike any other, a man remembered not just for the empires he built, but for the compassion and wisdom with which he ruled. His name was Cyrus the Great. Before we begin his story, allow yourself to settle into the warmth of your bed, feeling each breath becoming slower, deeper, and softer. The darkness of the room around you wraps you gently, like the soft folds of a Persian silk cloth. Let your mind drift to a time thousands of years ago, to a desert plain illuminated by countless stars, where merchants, philosophers, and warriors spoke of a king destined to change the world. Imagine the ancient cities of Ecbatana, Babylon, and Massagetae, their towering walls casting long shadows in the evening light, as the people within prepare for rest, just as you are now. The scent of burning oils drifts on the night wind. The stars shimmer above, unchanged since the days when Cyrus himself gazed upon them. As you listen to the unfolding of his life, from his mysterious birth, whispered about in prophecy, to his daring rise against impossible odds and the creation of one of history's greatest empires, know that this story asks nothing of you. No decisions, no urgency, only the steady, comforting passage of time and the soothing cadence of ancient history. Let each word carry you further from the noise of the present day, deeper into the sands of history, where lessons were learned, destinies fulfilled, and legends born beneath the very same stars that shine above you now. So breathe once more, deeply, slowly, and allow your journey to begin. As you begin to settle deeper into comfort, let us travel now, not merely through miles, but across centuries, to a world shaped by sand, stone, and starlight. A world that existed long before our modern cities rose, before electric light pierced the night, before the names of our nations were spoken into being. This was the ancient world of Western and Central Asia, a cradle of civilization, a mosaic of empires, kingdoms, and tribes. To the east of the great Mesopotamian rivers lay a vast plateau of rugged mountains, open plains, and burning deserts. It was here that the Persians, a proud and resilient people, made their home. Known as Parsa in their native tongue, the land of Persia was a region of striking contrast. High, snow-capped mountains watching over sun-bleached valleys, rivers snaking through dry steppes, and lush oases offering life amidst the unrelenting heat of the arid wilderness. The Persians were not yet an empire. They were a collection of clans and villages, farmers, horse breeders, and traders. Their lives were marked by simplicity, yet their hearts carried grand legends of ancient heroes, kings favored by the gods, and destinies written in the stars. To the north of Persia stood the powerful kingdom of Media. The Medes were an ancient Iranian people, long established in the highlands of what is now western Iran. Their capital, Ecbatana, was a jewel of its age, a city of tall stone walls and magnificent palaces shimmering in the sunlight, its streets alive with merchants, priests, and soldiers. The Medes, masters of strategy and diplomacy, had forged alliances and subdued neighboring tribes, building a kingdom both feared and respected. For decades, they had ruled over the Persians, who lived as their vassals and allies. Further west, beyond the Zagros Mountains, stretched the fertile crescent of Mesopotamia, a land of great rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. Nestled between these life-giving waters was the fabled city of Babylon. Unlike the scattered villages of Persia or the highland citadels of Media, Babylon was a marvel of urban splendor. Towering walls, said by travelers to be so wide that chariots could race along their tops, encircled the city. Its hanging gardens, if legend speaks true, were counted among the wonders of the ancient world. Babylon was a city of scholars, astronomers, merchants, and priests. Its rulers traced their lineage to ancient kings, claiming dominion not only over their own lands, but over the cosmic order itself. Great ziggurats rose from the city center, their stepped towers reaching skyward like ladders to the heavens, where priests watched the stars and read omens in the movements of the planets. The Babylonians worshipped a vast pantheon of gods, Marduk, Ishtar, Nabu, and Shamash among them. They believed that the fates of men and kings alike were etched into clay tablets by the gods themselves, and that to defy the will of the heavens was to invite ruin. Beyond Babylon, to the northwest, lay the fabled kingdom of Lydia. This rich and powerful realm, ruled by the legendary King Croesus, lay in what is now western Turkey. Lydia was a land of rolling hills, fertile valleys, and bustling cities. It was famed for its great wealth, drawn from gold-laden rivers and the thriving trade routes that crisscrossed its territory. The Lydians were pioneers of coinage, among the first people to mint coins of pure gold and silver currency that would carry their influence far beyond their borders. Croesus, often described as the richest man alive, ruled from his capital. At Sardis, his court was one of lavish luxury, filled with artisans, musicians, and philosophers. Yet, behind the splendor, Lydia was a realm of warriors, ever watchful of the ambitions of neighboring empires. For Croesus knew well that power, no matter how gilded, is never without its rivals to the southwest. The lands of Egypt extended along the life-giving banks of the Nile, though this ancient civilization would not yet cross paths with Cyrus during his lifetime. Its pyramids, temples, and vast wealth cast a long shadow over the region. Egypt's pharaohs claimed divine authority, their rule as eternal and unyielding as the desert sands and beyond the known world. Across the steppes to the northeast lay the territories of fierce nomadic tribes, the Scythians, the and others, warriors of the wild, whose arrows fell like rain upon their enemies, and whose horsemen seemed born of the wind. This was the world into which Cyrus the Great would be born, a world divided by mountains and rivers, by gods and kings, by ancient grudges and unyielding ambitions. A world where fate was believed to be woven by unseen hands, and where a single life could ignite a chain of events powerful enough to reshape the very bones of history. It was a world without modern borders, without the familiar names we know today. The lands of Iran, Iraq, Turkey, Syria, and Afghanistan, as we know them now, were then part of this ancient and fluid tapestry, where empires rose like sandstorms and fell like forgotten songs. As you listen tonight, let your mind's eye drift. Over this landscape, picture the great walls of Babylon glimmering in the desert sun, the sharp snow-capped peaks of the Zagros Mountains piercing the sky, and the restless rivers carving lifelines through arid plains. Imagine camel caravans, laden with silks, spices, and lapis lazuli, priests chanting beneath the stars, and kings consulting seers who claimed to read the heavens themselves. This was a world of constant motion, of empires at war and merchants at peace, of prophets and poets, of gods both merciful and cruel, and in the midst of this ancient theatre, a child would soon be born. A child who, against impossible odds, would rise to challenge mighty kings, forge the world's largest empire to that date, and leave behind a legacy of wisdom, justice, and tolerance. His name was Cyrus the Great, and his story begins beneath those same stars that now keep watch over you. So breathe deeply once more, and prepare to journey with me through sand, stone, and starlight. As the 6th century BCE unfolded, the ancient world was a place of shifting powers and fragile alliances. Great kingdoms, once thought eternal, had begun to crack beneath the strain of time, war, and ambition. It was an age where a handful of men held dominion over vast lands, where borders were drawn and redrawn with the march of armies, and where the fate of nations could turn on a single battle, a prophecy, or the whim of a king. To understand the story of Cyrus the Great, we must first understand the world into which he was born, a world divided between mighty empires and ambitious warlords, each vying for dominance in a region that was both a crossroads and a battlefield. At the heart of this world lay Mesopotamia, the fertile lands between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. For centuries, it had been the cradle of civilization, home to the Sumerians, the Akkadians, the Assyrians, and now the Neo-Babylonian Empire. Babylon was the jewel of Mesopotamia, a city of towering walls, palaces adorned with lapis lazuli, and temples that reached toward the heavens. Its king, Nebuchadnezzar II, had ruled with unmatched authority, expanding Babylon's territory and erecting some of the most magnificent structures ever seen. Yet by the mid-6th century BCE, Nebuchadnezzar was gone, and Babylon's hold on the region had begun to loosen. The great empire, though still powerful, was plagued by internal strife, court intrigues, and unstable succession. Rivals watched from beyond its borders, sensing an opportunity in Babylon's waning strength. To the north and east of Babylon stretched the lands of Media, an empire forged by the Medes, an Iranian people who had risen to prominence by overthrowing the once feared Assyrian Empire. The Medes controlled a vast swath of land that included the Iranian plateau and portions of Anatolia. Their capital, Ecbatana, nestled in the Zagros Mountains, was a city of grandeur, known for its ringed walls and summer palaces. The Median Empire had, for many years, maintained a careful balance of power with Babylon through treaties, marriages, and shared military campaigns. Together, they had toppled the Assyrians and divided their spoils. But beneath the surface, distrust lingered. The Median kings, though allied with Babylon, harbored ambitions of their own. Their rule over subject peoples, particularly the Persians in the south, was firm but uneasy. It was within this fragile political environment that the small kingdom of Persia existed. Located on the arid plains of Fars, Persia was a vassal state under the dominion of the Median Empire. Its kings held local authority but answered to the Median monarch, paying tribute and providing troops when called upon, though not yet a major power. Persia's position at the crossroads of trade routes between Mesopotamia, India, and Central Asia made it a land of growing wealth and influence to the west. Across the Anatolian plateau lay the prosperous kingdom of Lydia, ruled by King Croesus. Lydia was famed for its immense riches, drawn from the gold-bearing sands of the Pactolus River. Sardis, its capital, was a city of splendor, and its rulers were patrons of art, philosophy, and monumental architecture. Lydia's influence extended along the Aegean coast, and its ties to the Greek city-states brought both opportunity and tension. Croesus, known for his love of luxury and his reputation as the wealthiest man in the world, kept a wary eye on his eastern neighbors. The balance of power between Lydia, Media, and Babylon was delicate. A single shift could ignite a chain of events that would reshape the region further southwest. Egypt stood as one of the oldest and most enduring civilizations on earth. Though its pharaohs no longer commanded the vast empire of earlier dynasties, Egypt remained a cultural and economic force. Its temples and monuments testaments to millennia of continuous rule. Pharaoh Amasis, too, sat upon the throne in the 6th century BCE, maintaining an uneasy peace with the other great powers through diplomacy and strategic alliances to the northeast. Beyond the Iranian plateau, vast steppes and deserts stretched toward the lands of the Scythians and Massagetae, fierce, nomadic horse peoples who raided settled kingdoms and whose skill in battle made them both a threat and an unpredictable factor in regional politics. Meanwhile, to the west, the fragmented Greek city-states of Ionia, Athens, Sparta, and Delphi began to stir with philosophical inquiry, trade, and the early seeds of democratic thought. Though still minor players on the international stage, their growing influence along the coasts of Asia Minor would soon bring them into contact and conflict with the empires of the East. This was a world where politics were personal, where marriages sealed treaties, and where betrayals could come as swiftly as the changing winds. Kings and emperors relied upon oracles, dreams, and omens to guide their decisions, and the outcomes of battles often rested upon the interpretation of signs in the heavens. The balance of power in the 6th century BCE was precarious, with no single empire holding undisputed control. Babylon sought to maintain its dominance over Mesopotamia. Media guarded its highland territories. Lydia accumulated wealth and influence, and Persia lingered on the fringes, overlooked by many, yet destined to change the world. It was a time when opportunity lay in the gaps between alliances, when an ambitious ruler could rise from obscurity to challenge empires. Into this uncertain, volatile world was born a child in the land of Persia, a boy whose name, Keru in his native tongue, would one day be spoken with reverence in Babylon, fear in Lydia, and admiration in Greece. The rise of Cyrus the Great was not inevitable. He was born into a world of shifting loyalties, dangerous ambitions, and ancient rivalries. Yet through strategy, courage, and an unusual spirit of humanity, he would harness the instability of his age and forge a new order, one founded not solely on conquest, but on tolerance, wisdom, and vision. As you settle deeper into rest, imagine this world: kingdoms divided by mountain ranges and deserts, soldiers standing guard atop ancient walls, caravans carrying goods along perilous roads, and distant fires flickering in the night. A world balanced on the edge of history, waiting for a single spark to ignite its transformation, and soon that spark would come. And now, as the world of ancient empires takes shape before you, as the names of Media, Babylon, Lydia, and Persia settle like distant echoes in your mind, we turn our attention to a single figure, a man who would emerge from these lands, not as a mere conqueror, but as a legend, a name whispered by poets, recorded by scribes, and remembered by kings long after the dust of his empire had settled. Cyrus the Great, even in his own lifetime. The story of Cyrus took on the qualities of a myth. It was said that his birth was foretold by dreams and omens, signs in the heavens that warned of a child destined to rule all lands from the mountains to the sea. The great King Astyages of Media, wary of such a prophecy, sought to eliminate this threat before it could draw its first breath. But as history often shows us, fate is not so easily denied. A baby abandoned to the wilderness, a humble shepherd cradling a future king in rough, calloused hands, a boy raised among simple people, unaware of the blood of monarchs coursing through his veins. And yet, from an early age, there were signs, a certain command in his voice, a kindness in his heart, a spark in his gaze that set him apart from others. As he grew, so too did the unease in distant palaces. Whispers of his bravery reached the courts of Media, tales of a youth who led his playmates in games of kings and armies, who settled disputes with wisdom beyond his years. In time, the truth of his birth could no longer remain hidden, and when it surfaced, it set into motion a chain of events that would topple ancient thrones and reshape the map of the known world. But Cyrus was not a man driven solely by conquest. Even in an age when the taking of cities and the subjugation of peoples was a measure of a ruler's worth, Cyrus chose a different path. He sought not only to defeat his enemies, but to win their loyalty, to honor their gods, to preserve their customs and grant them peace beneath his rule. His armies marched swiftly, yes, but wherever they went, temples were spared, captives were freed, and the rights of peoples were restored. This, more than his victories, is what made Cyrus great. Not merely a king of kings, but a king of hearts. His name would echo in the verses of Herodotus and Xenophon, in the scrolls of Jewish exiles who hailed him as a deliverer, and in the philosophies of Greeks and Romans who saw in him the ideal of a just ruler. And so, dear listener, as you begin to drift deeper into rest, let the story of Cyrus the Great unfold before you. A story of destiny, rebellion, mercy, and legacy. A story that begins, as so many great tales do, with a child, beneath ancient stars. Tonight, as you lie in quiet comfort, with the day's burdens slipping further from your thoughts, I will guide you through the entire story of one of history's most remarkable figures, Cyrus the Great, a man whose life was touched by prophecy, forged in rebellion, and remembered for both his courage and compassion in the hours ahead. You'll hear of his mysterious birth, wrapped in omens and royal fear, how a powerful king once dreamed of his downfall and sought to extinguish his life before it could truly begin. But fate, as it often does, intervened, and the child survived, cradled not in a palace, but in the humble home of a shepherd, raised among the simple folk of Persia, unaware of the bloodline that flowed within him. You'll journey through the earliest days of his youth, tales passed down through generations of storytellers, accounts of a boy who seemed destined for something more, whose leadership among his friends, wisdom beyond his years, and fearless spirit hinted at the great destiny awaiting him. As we move deeper into the night, I will recount for you how Cyrus rose to challenge the mighty Median Empire, toppling his grandfather's throne in a daring rebellion. You'll hear how he united the scattered Persian clans, built alliances, and claimed his rightful place as ruler, not through cruelty, but through justice and wisdom. You'll travel alongside his armies as they marched to the wealthy kingdom, of Lydia, where the famously rich King Croesus awaited. I will tell you of the battles fought, of Croesus's fate, and of the moment when wealth and power met compassion on the field of conquest. We'll follow Cyrus to the legendary city of Babylon, where he achieved one of history's most extraordinary feats, conquering the city without bloodshed. You'll hear how he honored the gods of the Babylonians, freed captive peoples, and was welcomed not as a destroyer, but as a liberator, a rare moment in the long, often brutal story of empire. Along the way, I'll share the wisdom contained within the Cyrus Cylinder, a declaration of human rights unlike anything the ancient world had seen, a testament to Cyrus's belief that a ruler's strength lay not in fear and force, but in the loyalty and respect of his people. And finally, as dawn approaches and your rest deepens, you'll hear the stories surrounding his death, the battle against fierce warriors of the East, and the legends that rose in his wake. We'll reflect on the empire he left behind, the echoes of his leadership that still linger in philosophy, politics, and the hearts of those who remember him. This, dear listener, is the story that awaits you tonight. A tale of destiny, rebellion, mercy, and empire. A story meant not only to be heard, but to be felt as the ancient world gently cradles you into sleep. In a time when the world was still young, and the stars hung low over vast deserts and towering mountains, a child was born in the land of Persia. His name would one day become legend, Cyrus, though at the moment of his birth, few could have imagined the future awaiting him. Cyrus was born into a royal lineage, both proud and ancient. His father was Cambyses I, the king of Anshan, a small Persian kingdom nestled in the southern reaches of the Iranian plateau. Though Anshan itself was modest in size and power, its people were known for their resilience and loyalty. Cambyses was a noble and respected ruler, governing his land with fairness and wisdom. But it was Cyrus's mother, Mandane, who connected him to the greater destinies of the region. Mandane was no ordinary Persian woman. She was the daughter of Astyages, the powerful king of Media, whose empire stretched across much of the Iranian plateau and beyond. Astyages ruled from the great city of Ecbatana, a place of towering walls, jeweled palaces, and ancient traditions. It is said that Astyages loved his daughter dearly, and when the time came for her to be wed, he sought a match that would secure his dynasty and keep his empire strong. To his surprise, however, the omens and the counsel of his seers pointed him toward an unusual choice, Cambyses of Anshan, a lesser king ruling a distant province, far from Media's seat of power. Though Cambyses was a man of good character and noble blood, he was no equal to the Median king in wealth or territory. And yet Astyages agreed to the marriage, for it was said the gods had willed it so. Not long after their union, Mandane became with child, and from the very beginning, strange signs and restless dreams plagued the court of Astyages. In one vision, the king saw a vine growing from his daughter's womb, spreading rapidly across all of Asia, its branches overshadowing every city and kingdom. In another, a flood poured forth from her, engulfing his empire and drowning all the lands within reach. Troubled by these omens, Astyages summoned his magi, the wise men and dream interpreters of his court. Their verdict was clear and ominous. The child Mandane carried would one day overthrow him and rule the known world. Astyages, gripped by fear for his throne and his future, resolved to act, though his heart wavered at the thought of harming his own flesh and blood. The survival of his empire demanded it. And so, as the child's birth approached, plans were quietly set in motion. plans to end the life of the boy before fate could claim him. But fate, as we shall soon see, would not be denied. Long before the birth of Cyrus, long before his name would echo through palace halls and across desert plains, a sense of unease had begun to creep into the heart of Astyages, the king of Media. Though he was a ruler of great power and prestige, Astyages was a man who placed deep trust in signs and omens. In his court, no decision of consequence was made without the counsel of his seers. The Magi, men skilled in reading dreams, the stars, and the movements of birds across the sky. It was during the final months of his daughter Mandane's pregnancy that the first troubling vision came. One restless night, Astyages dreamed that his daughter, heavy with child, gave birth to a son. From the child's body, a vine began to grow. It twisted and coiled with unnatural speed, thickening as it reached toward the heavens. Its branches stretched far beyond the city of Ecbatana, beyond the mountains of Media, and across the lands of Asia. In the dream, the vine's leaves overshadowed every town, village, and fortress, while its roots sank deep into the earth, binding the world to the will of the one who had birthed it. Astyages awoke, sweat-soaked and shaken. The image of the vine, vast and unstoppable, clung to his mind like a shadow. Fearing what the vision foretold, he summoned his most trusted magi at dawn, commanding them to interpret the meaning. The seers gathered in hushed tones, examining the details of the dream. Their verdict was swift and unsettling. The child man carried would one day grow to possess dominion over all of Asia, overthrowing his own grandfather and reshaping the world. Astyages, though deeply troubled, dismissed the dream as a figment of a restless mind. But peace would not return to him. Not long after, another vision came, this one even more vivid and terrifying. In his second dream, Astyages stood upon a high hill, watching the lands of Media stretched out before him. Suddenly, from his daughter's womb burst a mighty flood. The waters swept across the plains, submerging cities, drowning soldiers, and toppling temples. In moments, the entire empire was lost beneath the waves, and only silence remained. Again, he turned to the Magi, and again their counsel was the same. The dreams were no mere illusions. The child to be born would bring about the fall of a reign and claim sovereignty over his lands. To the ancient peoples of that time, dreams were more than passing thoughts. They were believed to be messages from the gods, glimpses into the unchangeable threads of fate. To ignore them was to invite ruin. Faced with these dire warnings, Astyages' heart was torn. He loved his daughter Mandane and wished no harm upon her. Yet the survival of his empire, the legacy of his ancestors, and the will of the gods seemed to demand sacrifice. And so, as Mandane's time of labor drew near, Astyages devised a grim plan. The child, upon its birth, would be taken in secret and put to death. The deed would be entrusted to one of his most loyal servants, a man named Harpagus, whose loyalty and discretion were without question. But as fate would have it, the gods, or perhaps the stars themselves, had other designs for the child who was about to enter the world. When the time came for Mandane to give birth, the halls of Ecbatana fell into a hush. Though the city's streets bustled with merchants and soldiers, as always, those within the palace walls sensed an unease. The royal magi walked in silence, and courtiers exchanged nervous glances, for in their hearts they remembered the ominous dreams of Astyages and the prophecies that had cast a long, dark shadow over the unborn child. On the night Cyrus entered the world, the sky above Media was clear, and the stars shimmered like scattered jewels. The boy was born healthy, with a strong cry and bright, searching eyes. Yet his arrival brought no celebration. There were no trumpets, no royal proclamations, no joyous gatherings in the court, only the quiet, heavy knowledge of what was to come. Astyages, tormented by his visions and the warnings of his magi, summoned his most trusted official, a nobleman named Harpagus. Harpagus had long served the king with unwavering loyalty. He was a man known for his discretion, wisdom, and quiet efficiency. It was said that in matters delicate and dangerous, none were more reliable on the dim glow of a private chamber. Astyages revealed to Harpagus the burden he intended to lay upon him. He spoke of the dreams, the vine that covered the earth, the flood that drowned his empire, and of the prophecy that foretold his grandson's rise and his own downfall. With a voice heavy with dread, Astyages ordered Harpagus to take the infant Cyrus and dispose of him. The child was to be carried beyond the palace walls and killed in secret. No trace of the boy was to remain. No word of his fate was to reach the ears of Mandane, who was told only that her son had died at birth. Harpagus listened in silence, his face unreadable. Though he was a loyal servant of the king, a deep unease settled in his heart. To murder a newborn and the king's own grandson, no less, was a deed that even the hard men of those ancient times hesitated to carry out. Yet disobedience to Astyages was unthinkable. In a world where a king's word was law, to refuse was to invite certain death, and so Harpagus accepted the grim command. But within his mind, a plan began to form, one that might spare the child's life without openly defying his king. He reasoned that if the boy could be given into the care of a trusted man, one far from the courts of Media, one who would never speak of it, then both the prophecy and Harpagus's conscience might find uneasy peace. Thus, he summoned a simple royal herdsman named Mithridates, a man of no standing or ambition, whose duty it was to tend the king's flocks in the remote hills beyond Ecbatana. The fate of an empire, and of one of history's greatest rulers, would soon rest in the calloused hands of this unsuspecting shepherd. Under the cover of night, Harpagus placed the newborn child into a simple woven basket, swaddled in fine cloth, yet destined for an uncertain fate. The halls of Ecbatana remained silent, unaware that within those shadows a decision was being made that would change the course of history. Harpagus summoned a trusted man from beyond the palace, a royal herdsman named Mithridates. Mithridates was a simple man, tasked with tending the king's flocks in the remote hills and valleys that lay beyond the city. He lived far from the courtly intrigues, in a humble cottage with his wife Sino and their own newborn son. Fate, in its mysterious way, had placed these two infants in the world at nearly the same moment. When Harpagus arrived at the shepherd's dwelling, he carried the infant Cyrus and gave instructions. Mithridates was to take the child deep into the wilderness, to leave him exposed to the elements, and let nature claim his life. Yet, when the herdsman laid eyes upon the baby boy, something within him stirred, a feeling difficult to name. The child's gaze, steady and unafraid for one so newly born, seemed to pierce through the night air. It is said that in that moment, Mithridates felt the will of the heavens settle upon his shoulders. Returning home with the child, Mithridates confessed the king's order to his wife, Sino having just lost their own infant son to illness only. Days before, was overcome with grief and sympathy. She begged her husband to spare the child's life. In a moment of quiet, desperate resolve, they made a decision. They would raise the boy as their own to protect themselves. Mithridates and Sino buried their own deceased child in secret and passed his body off as the remains of the royal infant. In doing so, they convinced Harpagus and the king's men that the boy had perished, and the prophecy had been extinguished. Thus, the child of kings was granted a second life, one far from the palaces and intrigues of Media. The boy, whom they named Cyrus, grew up amidst the wide plains and rugged hills of the countryside. His world was one of simplicity and toil, of chasing goats through rocky pastures, gathering water from cool mountain springs, and sleeping beneath a canopy of stars that stretched endlessly above the highlands. Yet even in these humble surroundings, the mark of destiny clung to him. From an early age, Cyrus displayed a natural command over those around him. Among the village children, he led their games and disputes with a wisdom far beyond his years. His voice carried authority, and his judgments, even in matters as trivial as who should tend the sheep or who should stand watch for wolves, were respected without question. It is said that one day, while still a boy, Cyrus was chosen by his companions to act as king in one of their childhood games. Seated upon a mound of stones, he assigned roles to his playmates. Some were to act as guards, others as servants, and one unfortunate child, the son of a noble Median courtier, was made to serve as a subject. When the boy refused to obey, young Cyrus ordered him whipped for his disobedience. The event reached the ears of the court in Ecbatana, for no son of a nobleman could be punished without consequence. The boy's father, enraged, stormed to Astyages and demanded justice. Intrigued by the tale of this bold and commanding shepherd's son, Astyages summoned Cyrus to his palace. When the boy arrived, he carried himself with an ease that startled those around him. The king, peering closely at the boy's face, saw a reflection of his own bloodline in the child's features, a strength in the eyes, a confidence in the jaw. Uneasy, Astyages questioned the boy, who answered plainly and without fear. Some versions of the tale say that it was in this moment, upon hearing the boy speak, that Astyages' suspicions deepened. The resemblance to his daughter Mandane could no longer be ignored. Thus, the chain of fate began to tighten once more. But for those early years, far from the court and its dangers, Cyrus grew beneath the open sky, shaped by the wild places of Persia. He learned the ways of the land, the flight of hawks, the signs of approaching storms, and the harsh lessons of survival. And though he ran with the sons of shepherds, the blood of kings stirred within him. As you rest now, imagine that young boy beneath the endless stars, unaware of the destiny waiting to claim him. A child raised by simple folk, yet carrying within him the spirit of empire. The story, dear listener, has only begun. Even in his earliest years, those who crossed paths with young Cyrus sensed there was something uncommon about him. Though he wore the simple tunic of a shepherd's son and roamed the rocky hills alongside the other village children, a quiet strength seemed to radiate from within him, a quality not learned, but born. The other children, without ever discussing it, began to follow his lead. When disputes arose over whose turn it was to tend the goats, or who should stand watch for wolves that prowled the distant tree line, it was Cyrus whom they turned to for decisions. He spoke with a confidence and fairness that belied his years, and his choices, once made, were rarely questioned. In the ancient world, leadership often revealed itself early, not merely in strength, but in wisdom, courage, and a natural sense of justice. Cyrus possessed these gifts in abundance. One tale passed down through generations tells of a day when a group of village boys quarreled over a dangerous game. They had constructed a crude ring of stones to serve as an arena, daring each other to wrestle within it. The strongest of them, older and heavier than the others, began bullying the younger boys, forcing them into contests they could not hope to win. Cyrus, though younger than the strongest boy, would not stand aside. Without anger and with a steady gaze, he challenged the bully to face him instead. The boy laughed, mocking Cyrus's slight frame, but agreed. The other children gathered in a circle as the two faced off beneath the wide, empty sky. When the contest began, Cyrus fought not with reckless strength, but with cleverness and strategy. He anticipated the older boy's moves, using speed and timing instead of brute force. In a sudden, well-placed maneuver, he brought the stronger boy down, pinning him amidst the dust and stones. The moment left the other children speechless. But it wasn't the victory alone that left its mark. It was what Cyrus did next. Rather than humiliate his opponent, he helped him to his feet and spoke words of kindness, reminding him that strength should be used to protect the weak, not oppress them. From that day forward, Cyrus's place among the village youth was unquestioned. Another story tells of a summer night when a fierce storm struck the hills. The sky split with jagged lightning, and winds howled through the narrow valleys. As the storm approached, panic gripped the small settlement. Flocks scattered, homes threatened to collapse, and the villagers feared for their lives, while others sought shelter. It was Cyrus who organized the younger boys to gather the flocks and lead them to higher, safer ground. He calmed frightened animals, guided the lost, and comforted the younger children. When the storm passed, the villagers found their homes battered, but their people and livestock safe, thanks to the courage and quick thinking of a boy barely into his teens. Such stories, though perhaps shaped by generations of retelling, reveal the essence of the man Cyrus would become. Even in his youth, he possessed not only bravery, but compassion. He understood that leadership was more than command. It was care, wisdom, and a sense of responsibility for others. As you drift deeper into rest, picture that boy beneath the starlit sky, standing at the edge of the hills, the wind in his hair, and a destiny waiting silently on the horizon. The blood of kings may have flowed in his veins, but it was the strength of his spirit that would one day shape the world. As with many figures who have stepped from the mists of ancient history, the early life of Cyrus the Great is wrapped in stories that sometimes conflict, sometimes complement, and sometimes sparkle with the colors of legend. Our main sources, those who lived centuries ago and sought to preserve the memory of this remarkable man, often tell his story in their own unique way. Among them, two names stand tallest: Herodotus, often called the father of history, and Ctesias, a Greek physician who served at the Persian court and whose accounts add yet another layer of detail, though sometimes more fanciful. Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BCE, provides one of the most famous and enduring tales of Cyrus's youth. He tells us of the dreams and prophecies that terrified King Astyages, the secret order to kill the child, and how the loyal servant Harpagus saved him by entrusting him to the shepherd Mithridates. According to Herodotus, Cyrus grew up unaware of his royal blood, raised humbly among shepherds until his true identity was revealed. Herodotus's account reads like a grand narrative, blending history and legend, and emphasizing themes of fate, destiny, and divine will. His storytelling invites us to imagine a boy caught between two worlds, the simple life of the countryside and the noble bloodline he would one day reclaim. In contrast, Ctesias offers a version that, while sharing many of the same elements, add some twists and turns. As a physician in the Persian court several generations after Cyrus, Ctesias had access to Persian records and oral traditions, but his narrative sometimes drifts into the realm of the dramatic and sensational. He describes vivid palace intrigues, secret plots, and a more detailed involvement of figures like Harpagus and the king's advisors. Ctesias's writings suggest a more complex political background to Cyrus's early years, with an emphasis on betrayal and power struggles. While some modern scholars regard parts of his account as less reliable, it remains an invaluable glimpse into how the Persians themselves might have remembered their great leader's beginnings. Beyond Herodotus and Ctesias, other ancient historians and writers, from the Jewish chroniclers who saw Cyrus as a liberator, to Greek philosophers who admired his just rule, add their voices to the chorus. Each version, shaped by its author's perspective and purpose, paints Cyrus's youth in different hues. Some tales highlight his courage and early leadership. Others focus on the divine signs that marked him as chosen. Some speak of hardship and exile, others of protection and secret mentorship. The truth of Cyrus's early years likely lies somewhere between these stories, a blend of fact and myth, history and legend. As you listen and drift deeper into your restful state, let these stories weave together like threads in a tapestry, forming a rich and vivid picture of a boy destined to become one of history's greatest kings. As the years passed, the boy once hidden away in the hills began to grow into a young man. Though raised far from the grandeur of palaces and royal courts, Cyrus carried within him a spark that no distance or hardship could dim, a spark of leadership, courage, and destiny. The lands of Persia, still under the shadow of the Median Empire, were home to many clans and tribes. These groups, while proud and fiercely independent, often found themselves divided by rivalries and old grievances. It was a land of rugged mountains and vast plains, where the shepherd's staff was as important as the sword, and loyalty was earned through deeds, not birthright alone. Cyrus, now a man, moved among these peoples with a quiet confidence. Stories spread of his fairness and strength. Unlike many rulers who sought to command by fear, Cyrus won respect through justice and kindness. His voice was calm but firm, his decisions guided not by cruelty but by a deep understanding of his people's needs and dreams. One day, it is said, Cyrus faced a challenge that would mark the beginning of his rise as a leader. A neighboring tribe threatened the safety of his village, raiding their flocks and disrupting the fragile peace. While others called for war, Cyrus sought a different path. He proposed a meeting between the rival chiefs, negotiating terms that respected the honor of both sides and ensured lasting peace. This act of wisdom did not go unnoticed. Word reached the ears of local chieftains and nobles, who saw in Cyrus a leader capable of uniting the fractured Persian tribes. But leadership would not come without trials. The mighty Median Empire ruled with an iron hand, demanding loyalty and tribute from its Persian subjects. The young king of Media, Astyages, still wary of the prophecy that had haunted his past, kept a close watch on the rising Cyrus. Whispers of rebellion stirred in the winds, carried by merchants and travelers, who spoke of a leader gathering strength among the Persians. Cyrus understood the delicate balance of power. He knew that to challenge the Medes directly would require not only courage but careful strategy. With the support of loyal friends and trusted advisors, he began to build alliances, reaching out to other clans, promising freedom and respect. Under his rule, his vision was clear: a united Persia, free from Median domination, where each tribe could live in peace and prosperity. The moment of rebellion came when Cyrus's forces, though small compared to the mighty Median armies, struck decisively. In a swift and daring campaign, he defeated Median garrisons, capturing key fortresses and inspiring more to join his cause. His success was not merely a matter of arms, but of hearts. Wherever Cyrus went, he treated conquered peoples with respect. Temples were spared, customs honored, and captives freed. This approach won him not only soldiers but loyal subjects who saw in him a new kind of king. When Astyages finally confronted Cyrus on the battlefield, the clash was both fierce and fateful. Though outnumbered, Cyrus's troops fought with determination and skill, fueled by belief in their leader and hope for a new future. The defeat of the Median king marked the end of an era. Cyrus had not only freed Persia, but established himself as a force to be reckoned with, the founder of a new empire that would stretch from the mountains of Persia to the shores of distant seas. As you settle deeper into rest, imagine the stirring winds of change sweeping across the ancient lands, carrying with them the promise of a new dawn. A dawn heralded by a man whose leadership was born not just of blood, but of vision and heart. Cyrus the Great had arrived. As Cyrus matured into a young man, the distant echoes of his royal bloodline still pulsed quietly within him, a silent call waiting for the moment to awaken. But the world he knew was divided, ruled by a powerful empire that brooked no dissent. The Median Empire, under King Astyages, held sway over Persia, commanding tribute and loyalty from its many tribes and peoples. For years, the Persians lived under the shadow of the Medes, their own leaders subordinate to a foreign crown. While some chafed under this rule, others accepted it as fate. But Cyrus was not one to accept chains, whether visible or unseen. The seeds of rebellion began not with the clash of armies, but with whispers in the winds. Cyrus, aware of his heritage and the prophecies that surrounded his birth, began to gather allies among the Persian tribes and noble families. He was a man of vision, knowing that any challenge to Astyages would require more than courage. It demanded careful planning, patience, and unity. One of the earliest signs of his rising influence was his relationship with Harpagus, the very man who had once been charged with ending Cyrus's life. Though once loyal to Astyages, Harpagus had grown disillusioned with the king's paranoia and harsh rule. Secretly, he became an unlikely ally to Cyrus, offering counsel and support from within the Median court. Harpagus's assistance was invaluable. He helped Cyrus navigate the dangerous politics of the time, identifying those who might support the cause and those who would betray it. Through whispered messages and covert meetings, the threads of rebellion began to weave a quiet, steady tapestry of resistance. Meanwhile, among the Persian tribes, Cyrus's reputation grew. Tales of his fairness, strength, and wisdom spread like wildfire, inspiring those who longed for freedom. Unlike previous rulers who had sought to conquer by force alone, Cyrus promised respect for customs, protection of local leaders, and a new kind of leadership based on justice rather than fear. But Astyages was no fool. The old king remained vigilant, suspicious of any signs of unrest. His court was filled with spies, and his soldiers kept watch on the movements of the Persian clans. Yet, despite his efforts, the seeds of revolt took root. Cyrus moved cautiously. He knew the importance of timing. A premature uprising could be crushed swiftly and mercilessly. So he waited, honing his alliances, building trust among the tribes. and strengthening his forces, the young leader also understood the power of symbolism and ceremony. He made a point to honor Persian traditions, participating in festivals, offering gifts to local leaders, and showing himself as one who valued the old ways while promising a better future. This careful approach won him many hearts. The Persians, once divided and wary, began to see in Cyrus a unifying figure, a leader who could bring peace and prosperity to their fractured lands. Tensions grew steadily. Small skirmishes and acts of defiance against Median garrisons became more frequent. Persian warriors, emboldened by Cyrus's example, refused to pay tribute or obey commands from Media. The old order creaked under the pressure of change. At the same time, Harpagus took greater risks. Within the Median palace, he plotted quietly, gathering discontented nobles and military leaders who shared his desire for change. His insider knowledge proved crucial in undermining Astyages' hold over his empire. As the day of reckoning approached, Cyrus prepared not just for battle, but for the birth of a new era. He called upon his allies to stand firm, promising them freedom and justice beyond the shadow of the Median throne. And so, beneath the ancient skies of Persia, the final threads of rebellion were pulled taut, ready to unravel the old empire and weave a new kingdom, one led by Cyrus, the boy once hidden in the hills, now destined to become the great dot. As you settle deeper into rest, imagine the quiet stirrings of revolution, the whispered plans beneath the moonlight, and the steady heartbeat of a people ready to reclaim their destiny. The story of Cyrus's rebellion is not just one of war, but of hope, courage, and the enduring human spirit. The moment that many had awaited, the turning point that would shake the foundations of the ancient world, finally arrived. The decisive battle between Cyrus the Great and the Median Empire loomed on the horizon, a clash destined to change history. For years, Cyrus had carefully woven a network of alliances among the Persian tribes, gathering warriors who believed in his vision of freedom and justice. His strategy was not merely to fight, but to unite, to inspire, and to lead. The Medes, mighty and seasoned, still held the advantage in numbers and resources. But Cyrus's strength lay in the spirit of his people and his cunning as a commander. The armies met on an open plain, the air heavy with tension and the dust of 1,000 footsteps. The sun rose slowly, casting long shadows over the two forces arrayed in silence, each waiting for the other's first move. Cyrus's men, though fewer, stood firm, their eyes steady, their hearts united. Among them were shepherds turned soldiers, farmers turned warriors, all bound by a common cause. They carried not just weapons, but the hope of a new Persia. The Median forces, led by King Astyages himself, were vast and well-equipped. Their banners fluttered in the wind, their armor gleamed under the sunlight, and their ranks were filled with veterans who had conquered many lands. As the battle began, the ground trembled beneath the thunder of hooves and the clash of steel. Arrows flew like a deadly rain, and the cries of warriors echoed across the plain. Yet, amid the chaos, Cyrus's leadership shone brightly. He moved among his men with calm authority, directing troops, rallying the weary, and inspiring courage. His presence was like a beacon, steady and unyielding, drawing strength from every soldier who fought. Beside him, one of Cyrus's key strategies was to exploit the divisions within the Median ranks. Harpagus, his secret ally within the Median court, had arranged for certain Median commanders to defect at the crucial moment, weakening Astyages' forces from within. As the battle raged, these commanders turned their weapons away from Cyrus, men and toward their own king, sowing confusion and panic. The tide began to turn. Despite fierce resistance, the Median army faltered. Astyages, seeing his forces crumble, tried desperately to rally his men, but the betrayal was overwhelming. The Medes fled the field, leaving behind their fallen and their pride. Cyrus's victory was not just a triumph of arms, but a fulfillment of prophecy. The boy once hidden in the hills had risen to overthrow the mighty Median Empire and claim his place as a ruler destined to reshape the world. In the aftermath, Cyrus showed remarkable mercy. He spared the lives of captured Median soldiers, restored the cities, and respected the customs and religions of the conquered. His rule was marked not by cruelty, but by justice and wisdom, earning him the loyalty of many who had once been enemies. The fall of the Median Empire marked the birth of the Achaemenid Persian Empire, a vast kingdom that would stretch from the borders of Egypt to the Indus River, uniting diverse peoples under a single, enlightened rule. As night falls and your thoughts drift, imagine the clash of armies beneath an endless sky, the hope and fear mingling in the hearts of men, and the birth of an empire that would echo through the ages. Cyrus the Great's story is a testament to the power of destiny, courage, and compassion, a story to cradle you gently into peaceful dreams. The dust of battle had barely settled when Cyrus the Great began the delicate and profound task of uniting two ancient and proud peoples, the Persians and the Medes. Though one had risen against the other on the field of war, now was the time to heal, to build, and to create something greater than either had known alone. The Median Empire, once vast and powerful under King Astyages, now lay in ruins, its throne claimed by Cyrus, the young leader who had emerged from humble beginnings. But victory in battle was only the beginning. The true challenge was to transform conquest into lasting peace. Cyrus understood this well. He knew that to hold an empire together, especially one made of many tribes, languages, and customs, a ruler needed wisdom, patience, and respect. So, he set about his work not as a conqueror but as a unifier. The first step was to secure the loyalty of the Median nobles and leaders who had once stood against him. Many had seen the futility of resisting a ruler as just and merciful as Cyrus. Through carefully negotiated alliances and acts of clemency, he won over many of these men, offering them places of honor in his new government, rather than destroy the old structures. Cyrus chose to preserve and incorporate them. The Median court, with its traditions and administrators, became part of the fabric of the new empire. This blending of Persian and Median ways created a unique strength, a harmony born from diversity. Cyrus also showed great respect for the customs and religions of his new subjects. In a time when many conquerors forced their beliefs upon others, he took a different path. Temples remained standing, sacred rituals continued, and people were allowed to worship in their own way. This tolerance and respect won Cyrus' admiration not only from his people, but also from neighboring kingdoms and tribes. His reputation as a wise and just ruler spread far beyond Persia's borders. Economically, the unification brought stability. Trade routes once disrupted by conflict reopened, connecting cities from the Persian heartland to the lands of Media and beyond. Markets flourished as goods, ideas, and cultures mingled freely under the protection of Cyrus's rule. Yet uniting an empire was not without its challenges. Old rivalries simmered beneath the surface, and Cyrus had to navigate these carefully. He relied on trusted advisors, including some former Median officials, to manage disputes and maintain order. Perhaps most importantly, Cyrus fostered a sense of shared identity among his diverse subjects. He encouraged loyalty not just to a king but to a vision of a realm where many peoples could live in peace and prosperity, under the banner of a leader who cared for all. This vision would lay the foundation for the great empire, which in the centuries to come would stretch from the deserts of Egypt to the mountains of India, becoming one of history's largest and most influential civilizations. As you imagine the sun setting over ancient Persia, casting long, golden rays over the hills and valleys, think of the quiet strength of Cyrus, a leader who chose unity over division, respect over revenge, and wisdom over tyranny. His story reminds us that true power lies not only in conquest, but in the courage to build bridges, to listen, and to lead with a heart open to all. Now, as you drift deeper into peaceful sleep, let the gentle winds of history carry you forward, cradled by the legacy of a king whose greatness was born not just of war, but of the lasting bonds he forged across a vast and diverse empire. As Cyrus the Great moved beyond victory and the unification of Persia and Media, he faced a new and complex challenge: how to build an empire that could endure the tests of time. The lands he ruled were vast and varied, filled with different peoples, languages, and traditions. To hold such an empire together required more than strength of arms. It required wisdom, strategy, and foresight. One of Cyrus's greatest political insights was his respect for local customs and leaders. Instead of imposing harsh rule or erasing local identities, he allowed a remarkable degree of autonomy. In cities and provinces far from his palace, local rulers were often kept in place, their authority recognized as long as they pledged loyalty and paid tribute. This policy of tolerance fostered loyalty rather than rebellion. People were more willing to accept Cyrus's rule because they saw him as a just and respectful king, not a tyrant. His ability to blend Persian governance with local traditions became a cornerstone of his empire's strength. On the military front, Cyrus was a master of strategy and innovation. He understood that the vastness of his empire made it impossible to rely solely on brute force. Instead, he built a professional, disciplined army capable of swift and flexible movement. His forces were composed not just of Persians but of warriors drawn from many different tribes and peoples within the empire. This diversity was a strength, bringing together a range of skills and knowledge of local terrain and tactics. Cyrus also employed clever diplomacy to avoid unnecessary conflicts. Through alliances, marriages, and negotiations, he expanded his influence peacefully when possible, reserving warfare for times when no other path remained, when battle was necessary. Cyrus's strategies reflected his understanding of both the strengths and weaknesses of his enemies. He used surprise attacks, carefully chosen battlefields, and psychological tactics to outmaneuver larger or better equipped foes. One famous example was his campaign against the Lydian king Croesus. Though Croesus ruled a wealthy and powerful kingdom, Cyrus's forces used speed and determination to quickly overcome the Lydian army. His ability to adapt to new challenges and to lead with both courage and prudence made him a formidable commander. Cyrus also emphasized the importance of loyalty and morale within his army. He treated his soldiers with respect and reward, inspiring fierce dedication. His leadership created a bond between ruler and warrior that strengthened the empire's military might. Politically, Cyrus's administration was built on trust and delegation. He appointed satraps, governors responsible for different regions, who managed local affairs while answering to the king. These satraps were carefully chosen, often from noble families, and held accountable to prevent corruption or rebellion. This system allowed Cyrus to govern a sprawling empire without being overwhelmed by its size. Communication lines were established, roads were built, and messengers carried the king's commands swiftly across vast distances. Moreover, Cyrus's respect for the diverse peoples under his rule extended to religion. He is remembered for policies that allowed conquered peoples to continue their worship and even restore their temples. This religious tolerance helped stabilize the empire, reducing resistance and fostering goodwill. All these political and military strategies combined to create a foundation upon which the Persian Empire would flourish for centuries. Cyrus' vision was not merely to conquer, but to build a realm of peace, prosperity, and cultural richness. As you let your mind wander through the ancient lands, imagine the careful planning, the swift movements of armies, and the quiet conversations in royal chambers. Picture a leader who knew that strength came not only from swords and shields, but from respect, justice, and wise governance. And so, under the stars of a timeless sky, the early Persian Empire took shape, a beacon of order amid a world of chaos, shaped by the hand of Cyrus the Great. After uniting Persia and Media under his rule, Cyrus the Great set his sights westward, toward the rich and powerful kingdom of Lydia, ruled by King Croesus. Lydia was famed throughout the ancient world for its immense wealth, gold that gleamed like the sun itself, and riches that inspired stories and legends. But beyond the treasures lay a kingdom that stood as a rival power in Anatolia, controlling important trade routes and commanding formidable armies. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test Cyrus's military genius and resolve. Croesus, aware of the rising power of Persia, sought to challenge the young empire before it grew too strong. He forged alliances with neighboring states, confident that his riches could buy victory or, at least, deter invasion. The Lydian king was proud and ambitious, believing his wealth and experienced forces would be enough to halt Cyrus's advance. But Cyrus, known for his strategic mind and patience, was not easily intimidated. He carefully prepared his army, assembling forces from the diverse peoples of his empire, skilled archers from the mountains, swift horsemen from the plains, and disciplined infantry ready to face any challenge. His commanders were seasoned leaders who understood the terrain and the stakes. The campaign began with careful maneuvering. Cyrus avoided rushing into battle, instead choosing to advance methodically, securing supply lines and forging alliances with cities along the way. His goal was not just to conquer Lydia, but to integrate it peacefully into his growing empire. Croesus, meanwhile, moved his forces to confront the Persian army near the river Halys, the natural boundary between their realms. The two armies faced each other across the waters, each waiting for the other to make the first move. A tense standoff followed, marked by diplomacy, spies, and subtle maneuvers. But soon the inevitable battle was joined. The fighting was fierce and brutal, echoing across the hills and valleys. Cyrus's troops, though sometimes outnumbered, fought with discipline and unity. His strategies emphasized flexibility, using the varied skills of his multi-ethnic army to outflank and outsmart the Lydians. One key to Cyrus's success was his ability to maintain the morale of his troops. Unlike many rulers, he treated his soldiers with respect, rewarding bravery and fostering loyalty. This bond between leader and army gave the Persians an edge even against well-equipped foes. The decisive moment came when Cyrus's forces launched a surprise attack on the Lydian flanks, breaking through the enemy lines and forcing a retreat. Croesus, seeing his army falter, was captured, a moment that marked the end of Lydian independence. But Cyrus's victory was notable not only for the battlefield success, but for what followed. Instead of pillaging and destruction, Cyrus showed mercy and wisdom. He spared Croesus's life, incorporating Lydia into his empire, while respecting its culture and traditions. This approach further enhanced Cyrus's reputation as a just and enlightened ruler. The conquered peoples saw not a tyrant, but a king who valued peace and prosperity. As you relax and listen, picture the sun setting over the battle-scarred plains, the quiet after the storm, and a leader who understood the true conquest was about more than weapons. It was about hearts and minds. The campaign against King Croesus was a defining moment, one that expanded the Persian Empire's reach and set the stage for centuries of growth and influence. And now, as you drift toward restful sleep, let the story of this great conquest fill your dreams with images of courage, wisdom, and the steady rise of an empire destined to change the world. After the decisive victory against King Croesus on the battlefield, Cyrus the Great set his eyes on Sardis, the magnificent capital of Lydia. Nestled atop a steep hill, Sardis was known for its imposing walls, rich palaces, and bustling markets overflowing with treasures from distant lands. It was a city both proud and well fortified, the heart of Lydian power and wealth. The siege of Sardis was to be one of the defining moments of Cyrus's campaign, a test of patience, strategy, and determination. Sardis's walls were said to be almost impregnable, towering high with thick stone ramparts, manned by well-trained soldiers loyal to Croesus's kingdom. Inside, the citizens prepared for a long and grueling defense, stockpiling food and weapons, and readying themselves for the inevitable. Cyrus, however, knew that brute force alone would not bring down such a fortress. Instead, he began a siege marked by careful planning and relentless pressure. His army encircled the city, cutting off supplies and communication, while establishing camps nearby to maintain control of the surrounding lands. Days turned into weeks. The people of Sardis watched anxiously as the Persian forces tightened their grip, knowing that relief was unlikely. Yet, within the city walls, hope and determination did not falter. The defenders patrolled the battlements, repairing walls, and repelling every attempt to breach their stronghold. Outside, Cyrus kept his forces disciplined, ensuring they remained focused despite the slow pace of the siege. He understood the importance of morale, not just for his troops, but also for the city's inhabitants, hoping that patience and persistence would eventually win the day. The siege took its toll. Food grew scarce within Sardis, and tensions rose among its defenders. Some began to question whether resistance was futile, while others vowed to fight to the last breath. In a bold move to break the stalemate, Cyrus sent envoys to the city, offering terms of surrender that promised mercy and protection for those who laid down their arms. His reputation for fairness made the offer compelling, but the pride of Sardis's leaders kept the gates closed. Then, one night, a critical moment arrived. According to some accounts, a secret betrayal within the city walls allowed the Persians to gain entry. A guard, perhaps weary of the long siege, or persuaded by promises from Cyrus's camp, opened a gate. Persian soldiers slipped inside under the cover of darkness, quietly overcoming the surprised defenders. The city fell swiftly thereafter. Yet, true to his character, Cyrus prevented the sack and destruction that so often followed such conquests. He spared the lives of Sardis' citizens, protected their homes and temples, and allowed the city to retain much of its dignity. This act of clemency further cemented Cyrus's image as a ruler unlike any other, one who wielded power with wisdom and compassion. The fall of Sardis marked not just the end of Lydian resistance, but the opening of new opportunities. The city became a vital part of the growing Persian Empire, a hub of trade, culture, and administration. As you settle deeper into rest, imagine the quiet tension of those long days under siege, the hope and fear mingling behind thick stone walls, and the steady footsteps of an army patient and determined. Picture Cyrus, calm and resolute, watching the stars above the hilltop city, knowing that true victory lies not just in conquest, but in the hearts won afterward. And now, as your eyelids grow heavy, let the story of Sardis's fall lull you gently into dreams filled with ancient winds and the rise of an empire destined for greatness. With the fall of Sardis, the fate of King Croesus, the wealthy ruler of Lydia, hung in the balance. Known far and wide for his immense riches and powerful kingdom, Croesus had faced the rise of Cyrus the Great with confidence. Yet now his world had shifted irrevocably beneath his feet. Captured by Cyrus's forces, Croesus stood before the young Persian king, a man who had risen from humble beginnings to command an empire stretching across vast lands. Many expected Cyrus to show the harshness typical of conquerors, but instead, a different story unfolded, one of mercy, wisdom, and magnanimity. Historical accounts offer various versions of what happened next. Some say that Cyrus spared Croesus's life after the Lydian king humbly accepted his defeat and pledged loyalty. Others tell tales of a profound conversation between the two men, where Croesus shared wisdom and reflections on fortune, fate, and kingship. One story recounts how Croesus warned Cyrus about the dangers of hubris, the perils of assuming eternal power in a world ruled by unpredictable gods and shifting fortunes. Whether through genuine counsel or political strategy, Cyrus listened carefully, recognizing the value of humility and prudence. This act of clemency was no mere gesture. It symbolized a new kind of leadership. Cyrus's treatment of Croesus demonstrated that conquest did not have to be cruel, and that a wise ruler could win hearts through justice rather than fear. By sparing Croesus and integrating Lydia peacefully into his empire, Cyrus set a precedent that echoed throughout his reign. He showed respect for former enemies and their cultures, fostering loyalty and stability in newly acquired lands. The story of Croesus's fate also carried a message that would resonate for centuries. True power is measured not only by the extent of one's empire, but by the compassion and wisdom shown in victory. As you relax and let your mind wander, imagine the scene: two kings, once rivals, now connected by fate. The richness of Lydia's treasures, the quiet dignity of Croesus, and the calm authority of Cyrus, whose mercy would shape an empire. Let these images soothe you, a reminder that even in the darkest times, kindness and understanding can shine through. And now, as you drift deeper into restful sleep, carry with you the story of a great king's mercy, a timeless lesson from the dawn of an empire. After the successful conquest of Lydia and the expansion of his empire to the west, Cyrus the Great's ambitions turned eastward toward the ancient and storied city of Babylon. Known as a jewel of Mesopotamia, Babylon was a center of wealth, culture, and power, ruled by the mighty Neo-Babylonian Empire. Its towering walls, magnificent temples, and bustling streets had witnessed centuries of history, legends, and kings. But what led Cyrus to set his sights on Babylon? What were the causes and circumstances that paved the road for this monumental conquest? At the heart of it lay the intricate political and cultural landscape of the ancient Near East. Babylon, under the rule of King Nabonidus, was a formidable power, but also one facing internal challenges. Nabonidus's long absence from the city, due to his religious reforms and focus on distant territories, had stirred unrest among the priesthood and the people. His unorthodox religious policies alienated influential groups, weakening his support at home. Meanwhile, the Medes and Persians had formed a strong empire under Cyrus's leadership, united and expanding rapidly. Babylon's position, strategically, located between rivers and fertile lands, made it a valuable prize for any ambitious ruler. Controlling Babylon meant commanding trade routes, agricultural wealth, and cultural influence. Furthermore, Babylon's relationship with neighboring peoples was complex. Some regions under its control were restive, and many viewed Cyrus as a liberator rather than a conqueror. Tales of his just and tolerant rule had spread, offering hope to those dissatisfied with Babylonian rule. Cyrus also saw an opportunity to fulfill prophecies and visions of a ruler destined to bring peace and order to the region. His campaign was not just about military conquest, but about restoring harmony and justice in lands torn by conflict and religious strife. The path to Babylon was therefore shaped by a mixture of political calculation, religious insight, and humanitarian vision. Cyrus's careful planning involved diplomatic overtures to Babylonian elites and neighboring states, as well as military preparations as you drift deeper into rest. Imagine the fertile plains and mighty rivers leading to Babylon, the cities, towering walls shimmering under the sun, and the quiet tensions simmering within its gates. Picture a ruler poised on the brink of a new chapter, one that would change the course of history and echo through the ages. Let the gentle unfolding of this story carry you softly into dreams of ancient cities, wise kings, and the enduring quest for peace. The grand city of Babylon, famed for its towering walls, magnificent gardens, and ancient temples, stood as a symbol of wealth and power in the ancient world. Yet, in the year 539 BCE, its fate was about to be forever changed by the arrival of Cyrus the Great and his formidable army. Babylon's ruler, King Nabonidus, faced a kingdom strained by internal divisions. His religious reforms had alienated the powerful priesthood, and many of his subjects longed for change. The city's mighty walls and defenses were formidable, but beneath the surface, cracks had begun to form. Cyrus, ever the wise and patient commander, understood that brute force alone would not secure Babylon's conquest. His strategy was a blend of military skill, diplomacy, and respect for the city's traditions. Before the siege began, Cyrus sent envoys to Babylon, proclaiming that he came not as a destroyer, but as a liberator and restorer of order. His message resonated with many Babylonians. Weary of their king's rule, the Persian army approached the city with careful precision. Rather than storming the walls with violence, Cyrus's forces focused on cutting off supplies and surrounding Babylon to isolate it. His troops dug canals to divert the Euphrates River, which flowed through the city, lowering the water levels to allow soldiers to enter through the riverbed beneath the walls. A clever and unexpected tactic as the river's waters receded. A contingent of Persian soldiers quietly entered Babylon under cover of night, opening the gates for the rest of the army. The city fell swiftly, with minimal destruction and loss of life. Cyrus's entrance into Babylon was marked by respect and reverence for its culture and people. He allowed the restoration of temples and religious practices, including the return of exiled peoples to their homelands, such as the Jews, who had been captive in Babylon. This magnanimous approach earned Cyrus immense respect and loyalty. He was not merely a conqueror, but a ruler, who sought to bring peace and prosperity to all his subjects. The fall of Babylon signaled the birth of an empire that stretched from the Mediterranean Sea to the Indus River, uniting a vast and diverse population under one banner. As you relax and let your mind drift, imagine the mighty Euphrates flowing gently through the city, the calm streets welcoming a new era, and the quiet strength of a leader whose vision reshaped the ancient world. Let the story of Babylon's conquest lull you into peaceful dreams, carried by the timeless currents of history and hope. With the peaceful conquest of Babylon, Cyrus the Great faced the immense task of ruling over one of the most ancient and culturally rich cities in the world. Babylon was not just a city. It was a symbol of tradition, religion, and history, with customs and beliefs deeply woven into the daily lives of its people. Cyrus knew that to maintain the loyalty of Babylon's citizens, he could not simply impose Persian ways upon them. Instead, he embraced a policy of respect and tolerance, a radical approach for the time. One of his first acts was to honor the Babylonian gods and restore their temples, which had suffered neglect under previous rulers. This gesture reassured the priesthood and the people, signaling that their traditions would continue to be valued. He also respected the Babylonian laws and administrative systems. Rather than replacing the local governors and officials outright, Cyrus often retained those who were competent and loyal, allowing the city's administration to function smoothly. This helped avoid the chaos that often followed conquest. The king's famous Cyrus Cylinder, sometimes called the world's first charter of human rights, proclaimed his commitment to religious freedom, the return of displaced peoples, and justice for all. This document, inscribed in Babylonian cuneiform, symbolized his unique approach to governance. Babylon remained a vital cultural and economic center within the Persian Empire. Trade flourished along the rivers and roads, and the city's scholars and artists continued to produce works that enriched the empire's heritage. By balancing respect for local customs with effective administration, Cyrus ensured that Babylon remained loyal and prosperous. His governance became a model for managing a diverse empire, composed of many different peoples and traditions. As you drift toward restful sleep, imagine the grand temples glowing softly under the stars, the quiet hum of marketplaces, and the gentle rhythms of life continuing peacefully under Cyrus's wise rule. Let this story remind you that true leadership lies in understanding, respect, and harmony, values that transcend time and culture. With Babylon secured and the Persian Empire growing stronger by the day, Cyrus the Great's vision extended even further. Beyond the fertile lands of Mesopotamia and the riches of Lydia, his eyes turned southward toward the ancient and mysterious land of Egypt. Egypt was a kingdom unlike any other, with its grand pyramids, vast deserts, and the life-giving Nile River shaping its culture and power. It was a land of deep traditions, proud rulers, and a civilization that had endured for millennia. Cyrus understood that conquering Egypt would not be a simple task. It required careful planning, alliances, and a strategy that balanced military strength with respect for local customs. His goal was not merely to expand borders, but to create an empire where diverse peoples could live in harmony under wise and just rule beyond Egypt. Cyrus's ambitions hinted at even greater conquests, lands to the east and west, new peoples and cultures waiting to be united under his banner, though Cyrus would not live to see all these plans come to fruition. His vision laid the foundation for an empire that would stretch across continents, influencing history for centuries. As you settle deeper into rest, imagine the vast deserts of Egypt shimmering under the sun, the slow flow of the Nile, and a leader dreaming of uniting the world with wisdom and strength. Let this vision carry you gently into dreams of ancient kingdoms, endless horizons, and the enduring spirit of conquest and peace. As Cyrus the Great's empire expanded across vast territories, from the mountains of Media to the plains of Mesopotamia, from the rich lands of Lydia to the ancient streets of Babylon, the need for a sophisticated, stable system of governance became clear. No single man, however wise, could personally oversee the affairs of millions of people across such a wide and diverse land, and so Cyrus laid the foundations for one of the most advanced administrative systems the ancient world had ever known. At the heart of this system was a concept both simple and brilliant: delegated authority under royal oversight. Cyrus divided his empire into large regions called satrapies, territories somewhat like provinces, each governed by a satrap or provincial governor. These satraps were chosen for their loyalty, competence, and understanding of local affairs. The satraps held significant power within their regions. They managed tax collection, maintained order, enforced laws, and oversaw the protection of trade routes and infrastructure. Yet their authority was balanced by a system of checks that prevented rebellion or corruption. Cyrus appointed royal officials known as the king's eyes and ears, inspectors who traveled the empire in secret or with small entourages. Their role was to observe the conduct of satraps, hear the grievances of local people, and report directly to the king. This ensured that Cyrus remained informed about the state of his empire and could act swiftly against injustice or disloyalty. In addition to this, local customs and laws were often preserved. Cyrus believed that governance worked best when it adapted to the culture of its people. In each region, traditional leaders and elders were given a voice. Temples were respected, and legal systems were blended rather than erased. This remarkable tolerance allowed the empire to govern peoples of many religions, languages, and traditions without constant unrest. The empire's infrastructure also played a vital role. Royal roads connected cities and satrapies, enabling swift communication and travel. These roads were patrolled and maintained, allowing messengers on horseback to carry royal decrees across thousands of miles in mere days, a logistical marvel for its time. Economically, the empire standardized weights, measures, and currency, easing trade between distant regions. Markets flourished, connecting merchants from Egypt to India, from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean dot, and at the center of it all stood Cyrus, a ruler whose leadership blended wisdom with practical governance. He appointed advisors from diverse backgrounds: Persians, Medes, Babylonians, Lydians, valuing skill and integrity over origin. His policies of religious freedom, fair taxation, and local autonomy fostered peace and loyalty. The empire grew not just through conquest, but through the willing cooperation of those who recognized the justice and order Cyrus offered. As you let your thoughts drift now, imagine these ancient roads stretching across golden plains, dotted with travelers and merchants. Picture the grand halls where satraps met with local elders. settling disputes and offering tribute to the king. In your mind, the scribes, by lamplight, recording taxes, laws, and decrees, and the steady hands of architects rebuilding temples, and markets and cities reborn under Persian rule. In this way, Cyrus's empire did not merely rule by the sword. It thrived because it understood the value of trust, structure, and humanity. And so, as the stars wheel above the empire's cities, let your thoughts grow still, knowing that even in ages long past, wisdom found a way to bind vast lands together. In peace now, let the gentle order of ancient Persia cradle you towards sleep. In an age when conquering kings often demanded that their subjects abandon old gods and customs, Cyrus the Great stood apart. He believed that true strength came not from erasing traditions, but from embracing them, from weaving diverse cultures into a harmonious tapestry that could endure the passage of time. This belief shaped one of the most remarkable qualities of the Persian Empire under Cyrus. Its policy of tolerance and respect for local customs and religions, as Cyrus's armies moved from the hills of Media to the plains of Mesopotamia, from the rich valleys of Lydia to the ancient streets of Babylon. He understood that each land held sacred traditions and long-practiced ways of life. Rather than destroy these, he honored them in cities like Babylon, where towering temples rose in devotion to gods like Marduk. Cyrus issued decrees that not only protected these holy places, but also restored those that had fallen into neglect. He instructed his governors and satraps to respect the priests and religious leaders, to maintain rituals, and to allow the people to continue their ancient ceremonies. One of the most famous examples of this wisdom came when Cyrus ordered the return of exiled peoples to their homelands, a profound act of mercy and respect. Among them were the Jewish people who had long been captives in Babylon. In what would become a defining moment in history, Cyrus allowed them to return to Jerusalem to rebuild their temple and to practice their faith freely. This policy of tolerance was more than a gesture. It was a governing philosophy. Cyrus believed that an empire bound by mutual respect was far stronger than one ruled by fear alone. Across the vast Persian Empire, religious festivals continued undisturbed. Local leaders, elders, and priests remained in positions of influence. In regions where Zoroastrian fire temples stood beside Babylonian ziggurats, Egyptian shrines, and Anatolian sanctuaries, Cyrus's laws ensured that no place of worship would be threatened under his reign. His policies encouraged dialogue between cultures, fostering an environment where ideas, languages, and beliefs could travel along the empire's great roads, enriching every city and province. The legacy of this tolerance was not only peace, but prosperity. Trade flourished between peoples of different faiths. Scholars exchanged knowledge, artisans shared techniques, and festivals became occasions where diverse communities came together, celebrating both their differences and their shared humanity. It was this delicate balance of unity and diversity that allowed the Persian Empire to endure for centuries, becoming a model for later civilizations. As you close your eyes now, imagine those ancient cities by lantern light, the sounds of temple bells, the chants of priests, the call to worship in distant lands. Picture the relief of a freed exile returning home, the warmth of a community gathering once more in a sacred place, the quiet respect between ruler and subject, no matter their god or language. Cyrus's wisdom reminds us that peace is built not by crushing what makes us different, but by understanding and valuing it. And so, beneath the vast stars of an ancient world, Let your mind drift to a time when an empire's greatness was measured not by the walls it raised, but by the hearts it united. Let these gentle stories of tolerance, dignity, and compassion cradle you toward restful sleep, in the comforting knowledge that even in distant ages there were leaders who chose wisdom over tyranny. Among the many treasures and artifacts left behind by ancient empires, few hold the quiet, enduring power of a simple clay object known as the Cyrus Cylinder, crafted over 2.5 millennia ago. This unassuming, barrel-shaped tablet, inscribed in the ancient cuneiform script of Babylon, offers us a rare, intimate glimpse into the thoughts and ideals of a ruler whose wisdom would echo through the centuries. When Cyrus the Great entered Babylon in 539 BCE, he did so not as a pillaging conqueror, but as a liberator and restorer of order. To mark this moment, his scribes recorded a declaration upon clay, a document meant not only for the people of Babylon, but as a lasting testament to his philosophy of leadership. The Cyrus Cylinder, discovered in the ruins of Babylon in 1879, details Cyrus's respect for local gods, his restoration of temples, and his decree to return displaced peoples to their homelands. In it, Cyrus speaks of the city's god, Marduk, choosing him to bring peace and order where oppression had ruled. Unlike the warlike proclamations of so many ancient kings, the words of the Cyrus Cylinder reflect a striking humility and compassion. Cyrus claims no divine status for himself, but instead presents his kingship as a responsibility bestowed by the gods for the good of the people. He promises to repair the temples, end unjust labor practices, and restore those exiled by the previous regime. For the citizens of Babylon and for generations that followed, these were not empty words, but principles by which Cyrus ruled. What makes this clay cylinder so extraordinary is not just its historical content, but the timeless values it expresses: justice, mercy, and the right of all people to live in peace and worship as they choose. In modern times, the Cyrus Cylinder has been called by some historians the world's first charter of human rights. While it was written in the context of ancient beliefs and politics, its message resonates even today. It speaks of a world where a powerful leader used his authority not solely for conquest, but for protection, where freedom of worship and dignity for the displaced were not privileges, but rights. Museums and scholars regard the Cyrus Cylinder as one of history's most remarkable artifacts. It reminds us that, amidst the tumult of empires and armies, there have always been voices calling for understanding, fairness, and peace. As you ease deeper into rest now, imagine the ancient scribes at work, carefully pressing symbols into soft clay by flickering lamplight. Picture this small object, buried for centuries beneath shifting sands, its message waiting patiently to be rediscovered. Visualize a ruler who understood that true greatness lies not in fear, but in wisdom, in choosing mercy when vengeance was expected, and in leaving behind a world more just than the one he inherited. The Cyrus Cylinder reminds us that even in the distant past, when swords and spears decided the fate of nations, there were those who believed in kindness, in tolerance, and in the quiet, enduring strength of compassion. Let this story settle gently around you now, like the ancient earth that once hid the cylinder's message. Rest in the knowledge that even across the long sweep of history, the simple, beautiful idea of treating one another with respect has always found a way to endure. And so, under the star-filled sky of an empire long vanished, allow the memory of Cyrus's words to carry you into sleep, into dreams of wisdom, justice, and peace. Among the many compassionate acts that defined the reign of Cyrus the Great. Few carried such deep meaning as his decision to allow exiled peoples to return to their homelands. For decades, the powerful kings of Babylon had uprooted entire populations, scattering them across distant lands to break their spirits and assert dominance. Temples were left in ruins, sacred cities abandoned, and families torn from their ancestral homes. But when Cyrus entered Babylon, he did not follow the cruel customs of conquest. Instead, guided by a sense of justice and reverence for the dignity of all people, he issued decrees allowing those displaced to return to the lands of their ancestors. Among the most significant of these acts was his edict concerning the Jewish people, who had lived in exile in Babylon since the fall of Jerusalem decades earlier. For the Jewish community, Cyrus's decree was nothing short of a miracle. He ordered that they be allowed to return to Jerusalem, to rebuild their homes, their city, and most importantly, their temple, the sacred heart of their faith. He not only granted them freedom, but also encouraged neighboring peoples to support them with silver, gold, and supplies for the journey and the restoration of their holy sanctuary. This decision was more than a political gesture. It reflected Cyrus's belief that peace was best preserved when people were free to worship their gods and live upon their native soil. The return to Jerusalem marked a profound turning point in Jewish history, a moment of hope after years of sorrow and a story of restoration after ruin. In later generations, Cyrus would be remembered with gratitude and reverence. He was spoken of as a chosen instrument of divine will, a king of foreign lands who nevertheless honored the God of Israel and upheld justice. As you rest now, picture the caravans setting out from Babylon, families carrying what little they possessed, elders guiding children toward the promise of home. Imagine the joy of those who saw Jerusalem's hills rising once more in the distance, and the moment when stone upon stone was laid to rebuild the temple. Cyrus's legacy lives not only in the ruins of ancient cities or the lines of dusty scrolls, but in the enduring gratitude of those he freed. Let this story settle gently around you, a reminder that even in the harshest times, kindness and mercy can change the course of nations. And now, beneath the quiet hush of ancient skies, drift into sleep with the knowledge that in every age there are those who choose to heal rather than harm, and their stories endure forever. Beneath the crown and armor of Cyrus the Great was not just a warrior or a conqueror, but a thinker, a leader whose philosophy would shape not only his empire, but the very idea of rulership for generations to come. Unlike many of his predecessors and rivals, Cyrus did not believe that power was meant to be exercised through fear alone. He saw himself not as a master of the people, but as their guardian, entrusted with their welfare, their traditions, and their future. At the heart of Cyrus's philosophy was a commitment to justice. In his view, a ruler's greatness was measured not by the number of lands conquered, but by how fairly he treated those within them. Every person, regardless of their race, faith, or rank, deserved dignity. The strong were to protect the weak, and the king was to stand as the highest example of mercy and fairness. This belief extended beyond grand proclamations. It shaped his policies, his treatment of conquered peoples, and his decisions in times of crisis. He believed that by honoring local customs, respecting diverse faiths, and upholding the rights of his subjects, his empire would grow stronger, not through oppression, but through loyalty. Cyrus also recognized the importance of humanity in leadership. He understood the burdens his people carried, the farmer tending his fields, the merchant along the dusty roads, the families of soldiers who longed for peace. A wise ruler, he believed, must care for the simple and the mighty alike. Even in war, Cyrus practiced restraint. His mercy toward defeated kings, his protection of cities, and his efforts to rebuild what was destroyed made him beloved not only by Persians, but by those he conquered. As you drift into sleep now, imagine a world where the measure of a ruler lay not in bloodshed, but in compassion. Picture a king whose hand offered not just a sword, but a promise of peace and justice. Let the wisdom of Cyrus the Great lull you into rest, reminding you that true strength is gentle, and that even in the vast sweep of history, kindness leaves the longest echo. As the years passed and Cyrus's empire stretched from the shores of the Aegean to the fertile plains of Mesopotamia, there remained one land beyond his reach, a wild and untamed territory east of the Caspian Sea, where fierce nomadic warriors, known as the Massagetae, roamed the endless steppes. Their queen, Tomyris, was as formidable as any ruler Cyrus had ever faced, renowned for her courage, wisdom, and fierce independence. Tomyris commanded the loyalty of her people and the respect of neighboring tribes. Cyrus, though advanced in age, was not content to leave any corner of his known world unconquered. He turned his gaze eastward, toward the lands of the Massagetae, seeking to bring them into his empire and secure his eastern frontier. But this campaign would be unlike any before. The Massagetae were not city dwellers, nor builders of grand temples. They were a people of the open plains, masters of horse and bow, accustomed to a life of freedom beneath the wide, cloudless sky. They valued their independence above all else, and any attempt to subdue them was sure to be met with ferocious resistance. Cyrus sent envoys to Queen Tomyris, proposing a marriage alliance, perhaps hoping to claim her lands through diplomacy. But Tomyris, proud and unwilling to surrender her people's freedom, refused, and so the armies marched. Cyrus led his seasoned troops deep into the vast unfamiliar grasslands, where the winds howled and the stars stretched endlessly overhead. Battle after battle, the Massagetae resisted with ferocity, striking swiftly on horseback and vanishing into the steppe. The decisive moment came when Cyrus devised a cunning plan. He ordered his men to set a lavish banquet in an abandoned Persian camp, leaving behind tables laden with food and wine, luxuries unfamiliar to the nomads. A detachment of Massagetae warriors, led by the queen's own son, Spargopizes, stumbled upon the feast. Unprepared for the potent Persian wine the warriors indulged. Soon the effects dulled their senses, and Cyrus's troops, lying in wait, struck. The Massagetae were overwhelmed. Spargopizes was captured, and many of his warriors were slain. Grief-stricken and enraged, Queen Tomyris sent a message to Cyrus, condemning the trickery and vowing vengeance. According to legend, she proclaimed that though Cyrus was insatiable for blood, she would give him all he could drink in the final bloody confrontation that followed. The Massagetae and the Persian forces clashed in a battle so fierce it stained the plains with sorrow. The details of that fight, like so many ancient tales, are lost to time, but in its aftermath, Cyrus the Great fell. Some say he died in the heart of battle, others that he was struck down by Tomyris herself. Legend holds that the queen, true to her vow, ordered Cyrus's lifeless head to be placed into a skin filled with blood, saying, "Drink your fill of blood, for which you thirsted." Thus ended the life of one of history's greatest rulers, not in a grand palace, nor surrounded by wealth and tribute, but upon a lonely field beneath the boundless steppe sky. And yet, even in death, Cyrus's legacy would endure. His empire would survive, carried on by those he had led, and his wisdom would live in the hearts of those who remembered not just his conquests, but his mercy. As you close your eyes now, imagine the wind whispering through endless fields of tall grass, the clash of sword and spear giving way to silence, and the stars wheeling above a world forever changed. Let the story of Cyrus's final campaign carry you gently into sleep, a reminder that even the mightiest fall, but the legacy of kindness, courage, and justice remains. The death of a great king often becomes more than a single event. It transforms into legend, shaped by the voices of those who remember, those who grieve, and those who wish to teach a lesson through the telling. So it was with Cyrus the Great, though most traditions agree that Cyrus met his end during his campaign against the Massagetae. The precise manner of his death was recounted differently by ancient chroniclers, each version revealing something of how people saw him, and what his life had meant to the world. The most famous account comes from the Greek historian Herodotus, writing more than a century after Cyrus's passing. In Herodotus's version, the tale is one of cunning and tragedy. As Cyrus ventured into the lands of the Massagetae, he devised a trap, a banquet of wine and rich foods, left for the nomadic warriors, unaccustomed to such drink. When the Massagetae partook, they were overtaken, and many were killed, including the son of Queen Tomyris, the proud and fierce ruler of the Massagetae. Enraged at the loss of her child, Tomyris sent a scathing message to Cyrus and gathered her warriors for a final, desperate battle. In this account, Cyrus fell in combat, struck down amidst a storm of blood and iron, and, as the legend goes, Tomyris, true to her word, found Cyrus's body upon the battlefield. She had his head severed and placed into a skin filled with blood, declaring, "Drink your fill, you who have thirsted for it." This version paints a dramatic and brutal picture, the death of a mighty ruler at the hands of a grieving mother and a fierce queen. Yet other ancient sources tell a gentler, quieter tale. The Babylonian chronicles, official records kept by scribes in the service of the Persian court, make no mention of a violent end for Cyrus. Instead, they suggest that he died peacefully, either in his sleep or from wounds sustained in battle, his passing marked by solemnity rather than spectacle. According to this tradition, his body was carried back to the Persian heartland, to the city of Massagetae, where he was laid to rest in a simple yet elegant stone tomb, a resting place surrounded by his people and honored by generations to come. The Greek historian Ctesias, who claimed to have served at the Persian court, offered yet another account. In his version, Cyrus was mortally wounded in battle, tended to by his physicians, and spoke tender words to his generals before passing away. His death, though in war, was noble and befitting a king. Later Islamic historians and Persian poets would craft still other versions, blending history and mythology, portraying Cyrus as a philosopher king whose death was a peaceful crossing from one world into the next, a ruler so favored by the heavens that even the earth mourned his passing. And so, over time, many Cyruses came to exist in memory. One, struck down by a warrior queen in a tale of vengeance. One, dying quietly, surrounded by those who loved and served him. Another, delivering final wisdom to his commanders, his last words filled with care for his people and the empire he built. Each story reflects a different truth, not just about Cyrus, but about the storytellers themselves. To the Greeks, fascinated by tragedy and heroic struggle, his end must be dramatic and blood-soaked. To the Persians, for whom Cyrus was a father to their nation, his death was to be peaceful, dignified, and solemn. As you let these ancient tales drift through your thoughts, imagine the wind carrying songs of his deeds across open plains. Picture torches flickering against the night sky, soldiers whispering of their kings passing around campfires, and mothers in distant villages telling their children of a ruler who brought justice and peace. In this, perhaps, lies the truest account, not in the precise details of how he died, but in how deeply he was remembered. And so, as you sink into restful sleep, let the stories of Cyrus's final days lull you like a timeless lullaby. Know that in the end, greatness is not found in how a life ends, but in the kindness, courage, and wisdom it leaves behind. After the dust of battle had settled and the weeping of soldiers faded into the hush of the steppes, the body of Cyrus the Great was returned to the land of his birth. Though accounts of his death differ, most traditions agree on where his mortal remains would find their final rest in the heart of Massagetae, the first capital of his empire. There, amidst rolling hills and quiet groves, stood a tomb unlike any the world had seen. Modest in size, yet solemn in its simplicity, it reflected the spirit of the king it held. The tomb of Cyrus was built of great white limestone blocks, carefully fitted without mortar, forming a stepped structure that rose gently toward the heavens. At its summit, a small stone chamber awaited, said to house the king's remains and his few treasured possessions. No towering statues guarded its entrance. No glittering treasures lined its walls. Instead, its dignity lay in its silence, a place where emperors and shepherds alike could bow their heads in quiet remembrance, according to ancient records. An inscription once graced the tomb, though its exact wording has been lost to time. The Greek historian Arrian recorded a version said to have been inscribed in golden letters, "O man, whoever you are and wherever you come from, for I know you will come, I am Cyrus, who founded the Persian Empire. Do not begrudge me this bit of earth that covers my body." It was a message not of power, but of humility, a reminder that even the mightiest fall to the same earth as all men. Persian funeral customs, rich in reverence for both body and spirit, ensured that Cyrus's tomb became a sacred place. Offerings of wine, incense, and flowers were brought by mourners. Travelers and kings alike made pilgrimages to pay respects. Even Alexander the Great, long after Cyrus's passing, is said to have wept before the tomb, honoring the memory of a ruler he deeply admired. As you settle into rest now, picture that lonely, sun-warmed stone tomb, standing sentinel beneath a velvet night sky. See the gentle flicker of oil lamps carried by mourners, and hear the soft winds whispering through the grass. Let the quiet dignity of Cyrus's resting place calm your thoughts, reminding you that in the end it is not wealth or war that defines a life, but the kindness and wisdom one leaves behind. In the centuries that followed the death of Cyrus the Great, stories of his life and reign passed from lips to scrolls, from poets to historians, taking on the hues of myth and memory. For those who lived in his time, Cyrus was more than a king. He was a symbol of wisdom, courage, and justice, and like all figures who leave so deep a mark upon the world, his story became shaped by the hands of those who remembered him. Greek historians like Herodotus and Ctesias offered different images of Cyrus. In one, he was the noble conqueror who met his end at the hands of a grieving queen. In another, he died peacefully, honored by his people, leaving behind a legacy of tolerance and strength. Persian traditions told yet other tales. Some called him the father of the nation, a leader chosen by divine will to unite scattered tribes and forge a great empire. Others spoke of visions and omens that foretold his destiny before he was even born. Religious texts, too, wove Cyrus into their narratives. In the Hebrew Bible, he was the chosen one of God, the liberator of the Jewish people, a foreign king who recognized the sanctity of faith and freedom. Over time, these accounts sometimes conflicted, yet each preserved a piece of truth, and, like a tapestry woven from threads of many colors, the myths, legends, and histories together painted a portrait of a man whose spirit transcended the centuries. As you rest now, imagine these ancient storytellers by flickering firelight, their voices soft, carrying tales of Cyrus across deserts, rivers, and mountains. Let those stories cradle you into sleep. For though the details may differ, the heart of Cyrus's story remains clear, a life lived with wisdom, mercy, and an unyielding belief in the dignity of all people. Long after Cyrus the Great had returned to the earth, his name continued to echo in the hearts and minds of rulers, philosophers, and poets across distant lands. For Cyrus was not simply remembered as a conqueror of nations, but as a master of wisdom, a leader whose philosophy of justice, tolerance, and humane governance left deep imprints upon civilizations far beyond the borders of ancient Persia. Among the Greeks, his legacy was admired with almost mythic reverence. Though Persia and Greece would later become bitter rivals, many Greek thinkers and writers looked upon Cyrus not as an enemy, but as the very image of an ideal ruler. The famous Greek historian Xenophon wrote an entire work titled Cyropaedia, The Education of Cyrus, a partly historical, partly fictionalized account that sought to capture not only the deeds of the Persian king, but also his character, leadership style, and moral virtues. In Xenophon's writings, Cyrus was depicted as wise, compassionate, brave, and just, a leader who won loyalty not through fear, but by inspiring respect and genuine affection. For Xenophon and others like him, Cyrus represented a ruler whose greatness lay not in mere conquest, but in his humanity. Even Alexander the Great, the young Macedonian conqueror who would one day overthrow the Persian Empire, held Cyrus in high regard. When Alexander reached Massagetae and stood before Cyrus's tomb, it's said that he removed his helmet, bowed his head, and offered a silent tribute to the memory of the great king whose empire he now inherited. But Cyrus's influence did not stop with Greece. In the days of the Roman Republic and Empire, his example continued to live in the writings of philosophers and statesmen. Roman historians saw in Cyrus a model of how power could be wielded with justice, and how empires could be built not solely through the sword, but through fairness and respect for those who dwelled within their borders. As centuries passed, rulers and thinkers from many cultures looked back to Cyrus as a figure worth emulating. His policies of religious tolerance, protection of local customs, and humane treatment of conquered peoples became a template for enlightened leadership in modern times. The Cyrus Cylinder, often regarded as one of history's earliest declarations of human rights, has been cited by leaders across the world. It was admired by figures such as Thomas Jefferson, who kept a copy of Cyropaedia in his personal library, and Mohandas Gandhi, who praised Cyrus's example of moral rule. His spirit even finds echoes in the principles that underpin modern declarations of human dignity and freedom, reminding the world that even in ancient times, there were those who believed in justice for all. As you close your eyes now, picture these distant lands, Greece with its marble temples, Rome with its bustling forums, and the courts of future empires, where wise leaders spoke of Cyrus by flickering torchlight. Imagine the stories passed from generation to generation, each carrying with it the image of a king who ruled not with cruelty, but with compassion. Let the thought of this enduring influence comfort you as you drift into sleep, knowing that long after crowns fall and empires fade, the memory of goodness lives on in stories, in hearts, and in the quiet dreams of those who remember. Through the sweeping tides of time, the name Cyrus the Great has remained a beacon of wisdom and justice. Unlike many rulers remembered only for their battles and conquests, Cyrus is celebrated for a deeper legacy, one rooted in kindness, fairness, and respect for all people's. Stories passed down through centuries speak of a king who ruled with a gentle hand, one who sought not to dominate, but to unite. His governance was marked by a rare combination of strength and mercy, inspiring loyalty without resorting to cruelty. Ancient peoples from diverse cultures, Persians, Babylonians, Jews, and many others, all found in Cyrus a leader who honored their traditions and beliefs. This respect fostered peace within his vast empire, allowing different peoples to live side by side in harmony, even in faraway lands. Rulers and philosophers admired Cyrus's approach. His example showed that true power lies not in fear, but in justice, that a ruler's greatest strength comes from compassion. This enduring reputation has carried through time, influencing ideas of governance and human rights even in modern days. Cyrus's image as a wise and just king reminds us that leadership is not merely about power, it is about service to others, about protecting the dignity and freedoms of all. As you relax now, imagine the quiet strength of a ruler who chose mercy over might, understanding over anger. Picture the grateful faces of those he freed, the temples he restored, and the promises he kept. Let these gentle reflections ease your mind and lull you into peaceful sleep, comforted by the knowledge that goodness and fairness have always found a place in history and within every heart that remembers. Cyrus the Great left behind more than just an empire. He left a legacy of wisdom, captured not only in his deeds, but in the words and philosophies that have been attributed to him across time. Though much of what we know comes from stories passed down through centuries, several famous quotes and ideas stand out, revealing the mind of a leader who valued justice, humility, and humanity above all. One of the most enduring sayings, often linked to Cyrus, reminds us of his humble approach to power. I am Cyrus, king of the world, great king, mighty king, king of Babylon, king of the lands. Yet, even in declaring his titles, he followed with a recognition that kingship was a responsibility, not just a privilege. Another powerful message is found in his attitude toward those he ruled. A kingdom is not given to a man because he is mighty. It is given because he is just. For Cyrus, strength without justice was meaningless, and true greatness came from ruling with fairness and mercy. His famous decree, inscribed on the Cyrus Cylinder, also reveals a progressive philosophy. For his time he spoke of restoring temples, returning displaced peoples to their homelands, and respecting the customs and religions of all peoples under his rule. This spirit of tolerance and respect was revolutionary in an age where many rulers demanded absolute control and conformity. Cyrus's leadership philosophy emphasized that a wise ruler listens to his people and governs with compassion. He believed that peace and loyalty were won not through fear, but through justice and kindness. Even centuries later, philosophers and leaders have looked to Cyrus as a model. His words inspired thinkers like Xenophon, who wrote about Cyrus' virtues, and more modern leaders who saw in him the qualities of a truly enlightened king. As you drift toward sleep, imagine these ancient words softly spoken across time, like a gentle breeze carrying wisdom from one generation to the next. Let the philosophies of Cyrus the Great settle quietly in your mind, reminders that in leadership, as in life, kindness, justice, and humility light the way. As we come to the close of our story, it's worth pausing to reflect on the timeless lessons that Cyrus the Great offers to leaders and to all of us. In a world often marked by conflict and division, Cyrus's reign reminds us that true leadership is not about wielding power to dominate, but about serving others with wisdom and compassion. His example teaches that justice must be the foundation of any lasting rule, and that respecting the diverse beliefs and customs of people creates strength through unity rather than fear. Cyrus showed us that mercy is not weakness, but a profound form of strength, a way to heal wounds rather than deepen them. He governed not just with laws and armies, but with a heart open to the voices of his people. These lessons stretch far beyond the distant past, reaching into our own lives today. Whether we lead families, communities, or nations, the qualities of kindness, fairness, and humility remain as vital now as they were thousands of years ago. As you gently drift into sleep, let the story of Cyrus inspire you to think about how leadership in any form can be a force for good. Imagine a world where each of us carries a spark of his wisdom, choosing understanding over anger, respect over pride, and compassion over cruelty. May these reflections soothe your mind, inviting peaceful rest and dreams filled with hope. As our journey through the life and legacy of Cyrus the Great draws to a close, it's time to let the stories and lessons we've shared settle softly in your mind. Imagine the quiet night stretching all around you, stars twinkling gently in a vast, peaceful sky. Feel the calm breeze brushing softly, carrying the echoes of ancient tales, stories of courage, kindness, and wisdom that still shine brightly after thousands of years. May the gentle spirit of Cyrus, a leader who ruled with justice and compassion, inspire a sense of calm within you. Let his example remind you that even the greatest challenges can be met with patience, fairness, and an open heart. As you rest, allow yourself to be carried away by the soft rhythm of your breath, like the steady beat of a distant drum guiding you into tranquility. Know that, like Cyrus's legacy, your own story is important, full of potential, kindness, and hope. Let your thoughts drift like leaves on a quiet stream, floating peacefully toward dreams that nourish your soul. Sleep well, surrounded by the warmth of history's gentle embrace, and awaken refreshed, ready to meet a new day with courage and grace. Good night and sweet dreams.